Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Automated Managed Services with Autom8, presented by Michelle Thibault, Service Innovation Leader at ERP-One Consulting. Before we get started, I'd like to let everyone know that today's presentation will be recorded. All attendees will also be muted during the presentation. However, if you have any questions you'd like to ask Michelle, please enter all questions in the question box, and Michelle will be happy to answer them at the end of her presentation. Michelle, you can take it from here.
Great, thanks, Sue. So as Sue stated, I'm Michelle Thibault. I am the Service Innovation Leader here at ERP-One, and a lot of people ask me what that means. So basically that means I get to look at, processes that we execute today and new and innovative ways to execute those processes. I love automation, I hate redundant work, and so that's really, I guess, the base of how we came to Autom8. So before we get too deep into Autom8, for those of you who are not familiar with us, I'd just like to take a few minutes to talk about who we are, how we help our clients, and the things that we can do for you who may not already be a client. So to start off, it's good to know that all of our team members are ERP experts. That includes our founders, our managing partners. We've all worked together to develop best practices, procedures, and methodologies that really set us apart in our industry. We're excellent communicators, and we excel at managing projects. So we're not just a bunch of techies, right? We're technically knowledgeable, but we can also interact with employees at all levels. We are an employee-based company, so we attract and retain the best people in our industry, and we're over 90% employee-based with near zero turnover. That gives you a consistently excellent experience. We also have one of the largest in-house CNC and JD Edwards technical consulting resource bases in all of North America. We do operate around the globe, so we actually have operations out of North America, the UK, and South Africa, and that ensures that we can give you a wide service coverage area, 24/7, 365. So how can we help you? So the way that we categorize the way that we help our clients is around our premise of elevate, optimize, and enhance. And what that means is that we can maintain and optimize your current system. Let us be the ones to keep on top of the current trends, advise you on updates and upgrades to avoid draining your time and resources. In addition, we unlock the value and potential of your investment. So we can extend the power of your ERP system to move your business forward using expertise in customization, integration, all with that foundation of CNC that we have. I think the three top reasons why anyone loves working with us, first of all, are people. We all have deep technical knowledge and extensive experience in managing and optimizing ERP platforms. As I said, we're also excellent communicators, and we have a great ability to manage projects. In addition, our flexibility. We're wired to be both nimble and flexible. We've carefully developed our processes to adapt to your needs so we can create a custom fit that really works for you. We're also highly responsive. Our team moves quickly to deliver action when you need it. Now, our values. We really value and invest in long-term relationships. We really want to understand your business, know what success means to you, and then help you achieve it. Okay, so all that said, how do we maximize the value of your EnterpriseOne system? As an organization running your key business functions on JD Edwards EnterpriseOne, you've invested significant resources like time, money, people into your ERP system. You need EnterpriseOne availability and performance. To achieve this, it's really crucial to incorporate EnterpriseOne maintenance program, which includes proper schedule and scope into your daily IT operations. So how do you do that? Well, you can invest significant time and resources. You can not do it, which I'm sorry, but I really don't recommend. Or you can entrust the work to a provider like ERP-One. What are the benefits of doing these things? Well, first of all, peace of mind. You don't have to worry. You know your system's monitored, you'll be notified when issues occur. Better insight into your system, and you know what's going on, you can pinpoint issues quickly. And of course, cost savings. You can do all of these things manually, but it's going to cost, right? Let's implement automation and make sure that these things are taken care of automatically. So that all brings us to Autom8. And before I get deep into Autom8, I'd like to tell our history and how we came to develop Autom8. Because I think the story, it doesn't just apply to a managed services company or to a technical services based company. It applies to everyone who uses EnterpriseOne. We started from a place where we were trying to improve our managed services offering. We have these best practices and schedules set for, checks and maintenance that we should be doing in an EnterpriseOne system. So we were doing all of these things manually. We implemented some scripting, but it just wasn't efficient enough. So we started looking at automation products, and we looked at several products, but we found that for the most part, they were either too difficult to use and required special training, they were too infrastructure heavy, or they were just too expensive to make them feasible for our clients. And then we found a company called RevSoft. So RevSoft is really the backbone of our Autom8 system. It's the engine behind it. So at first we had just looked at the scheduler from RevSoft, which is a great product, cost-effective, lightweight on infrastructure. It's perfect for our client base. But we evolved from there. So we used RevSoft Scheduler to run our processes. We used their Guardian product to monitor background processes. We used Message and Observer to monitor log files and facilitate alerting. And then we used View to create our reports, right, for visibility into the system. So all of this together came to be our automated JDE management system, Autom8. So the system includes, monitoring of your system, alerting, maintenance, and as a bonus, it can monitor your log files. So we can read those logs and perform alerting or reporting based on what we find. So we're going to start in the bottom left here with scheduled health checks. So first and foremost, the main reason why we developed Autom8 was because we needed to perform some scheduled health checks. Daily is the main frequency actually that we do our health checks. We can do them more often than that. We can do them at scheduled intervals. But these are, all the things that you need to know are working before your users sign in the morning. So we have a set of checks that we perform every morning before your users sign in. Next up is scheduled maintenance. So scheduled maintenance are those things that we do weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, all the important things to make sure your system is clean, running smoothly, right? You don't have files that are growing in size too large, right? So you work with submitted jobs, work center, stuff like that. So speaking of work center and work with submitted jobs purge, we have three main technical purges that we run on a weekly basis. So work with submitted jobs, work center, and the E1 scheduler purge. Now, we can schedule all those with Autom8. Now, if you have been doing this on your own for a while, you'll know that two of those purges cannot be scheduled because you have to pass in a date that actually changes each time that you submit it. Well, the great thing about Autom8 is that we can pass calculated date variables into UBEs. And that's actually facilitated by the RevSoft scheduler that comes with Autom8. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Next up, automatic ticket creation. And that's coupled with our automatic severity 1 callout. So what that means is every time Autom8 takes a look at your system or is alerted to something that is occurring in your system, we can either generate a ticket, right? We would call that a severity 3, it's not critical, or a severity 1 callout. So a ticket might be, you had 10 jobs that ended in error in the last 24 hours. Well, we're going to create a severity 3 ticket for someone to log in and take a look. If your EnterpriseOne services are down on your enterprise server, or your web server is stopped and not accepting connections, that would be a severity one callout. So what happens with the severity one callout is one of our people is actually called on the phone to get them on your system and resolving the issue immediately. Now, the important thing to note about these alerts, whether it's ticket or callout, all of these can be configured to go to someone internal to your company. So if you maybe don't want to have a managed services contract, or maybe you have a managed services contract with limited hours, and you just want to make sure that your internal CNC is receiving these alerts before it comes out to us, that's all configurable. So we can configure all of these items to go to you, and then you can decide what comes to us. Or we can just take care of it all. Either way, and any configuration in between as well. We have some who, they get the severity 3s in-house, and then they send all severity 1s to us. Highly configurable. I talked a little bit about automatic log filtering. So what we do is we monitor all of the log locations. So your enterprise server logs, your Jazz server logs, and Autom8 reads every message that goes into those logs. And we have a set of predefined filters that Autom8 pulls those messages through. So if we have an exclusion in place that says, oh, we know we can ignore that message, it means nothing, it's informational, Autom8 will just simply ignore it. But if a message is not caught by that filter and it slips through, Autom8 will take that message and it'll write it to a database. Now we have the ability to alert on messages, so we can do a ticket or a severity 1 callout, or we can put it in a database and then we can report on it. So what we typically do at the end of the week is we will produce a report of every error message that occurred in your system over the course of the week and how many times that error occurred. So it gives you some insight as to what's going on in your system and where you should be focusing your efforts. Now there's 2 items that really facilitate performance management from Autom8. The first one is we perform that everyone's favorite interactive check function. Log into a web server, open address book, find a record, and close out. So we execute this task at scheduled intervals throughout the day, and we record how long it takes to run. Now, you very quickly establish a baseline. You know how long that process should take to run. This allows us to produce some reporting on performance, but also isolate performance issues. So if your normal performance time is, let's say it's 5 seconds to execute that task, in the course of a day at 2 p.m., if all of a sudden that spikes to 20 seconds, you now have an exact time when your issue started, and you know where to start, when and where to start looking. The second piece of performance is a tool we call E1 application caching. So E1 application caching is meant for large or critical applications that you need to have in your web cache all the time. So I like to use sales order entry as an example. That first sales order person in the morning, let's say a Monday morning that signs in, they open P4210, and you know that person's always waiting, right? That initial application open is always the slowest. Well, with E1 application caching, we pre-cache those applications for you. So they're in your web cache. If there's a business function component, it's cached into the call object kernels. In addition, it generates your serialized objects on those tables on that application. So if you did a full package over the weekend, that first person who signs in is not only hit with caching, they're also hit with a serialized object gen. So what E1 application caching does is it completes all of those things before that first user opens the application. There's a really, really large performance impact here to those people who run those large applications. And lastly, I alluded to this one earlier, the advanced E1 scheduler. So the scheduler that we started with from RevSoft, and really, it exploded into this full system, but the EnterpriseOne scheduler that comes as a part of RevSoft scheduler is really something else. So you can perform, dependencies between EnterpriseOne and other applications. So if you have integrations, right? Maybe you populate a table in EnterpriseOne, and then you have a third-party system where your data is replicated, and you want to run a report maybe in your other reporting system. So you can run a UBE in EnterpriseOne to populate your table. You can then, once that UBE is complete, run the report in your reporting system, all with true dependency. So no more, oh, I'm going to schedule the report to run at 2 a.m. and hope my UBE is done. There's no more hoping anymore, right? There's true dependencies. In addition, I actually don't know of any E1 users who don't have this, so I'd be surprised to hear if anyone doesn't do this, but everyone seems to have that job that runs every 10 minutes. Everyone wants to run a UBE every 10 minutes between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., let's call it. So anyone who's set up a scheduled job in EnterpriseOne knows that you have to create a scheduler entry for each 10-minute interval. What a pain. So the nice thing, this is actually one of my favorite things about the RevSoft scheduler, is in the job configuration screen, there is literally 3 fields: start time, end time, and run interval. So to run that job from 9 to 3, every 10 minutes, I literally set start time as 9 a.m., end time is 3 p.m., and click my drop down and select a 10-minute interval. It's that simple. It's 3 fields on one screen. Huge time savings. But then I also have to ask, what's the reason for running that job every 10 minutes? You're probably waiting for data to pop into a table. And let's say 80% of the time, there's nothing in the table to process. So the UBE spawns, it starts to process and looks at that table. There's no data in the table, so I'm just going to produce a PDF that says no data selected, and then I'm going to end. You just wasted all of that processing power of your system to do absolutely nothing. With the RevSoft scheduler, we can run a simple query against the table, determine if the data is there to process, and if it is, we kick off the UBE. If there's no data, it just goes back to sleep and never submits the UBE. So now you're actually only using processing power for true value add work. It's not for nothing. All right, here's some samples of what you would see with a daily check out of Autom8. In the background, it's a little bit hard to see, but I will show it to you in a live system. So every morning in your email, you get this report, you scan down and look for anything that's not green. If everything's green, you know your system is good to go. In the foreground, this is a sample of the performance report I talked about. So every morning with your daily check, you would get a copy of yesterday's performance report, so you always know just how your system's processing. On a weekly basis, the top screenshot, and again, I'll show you this live, is a sample of what we do on a weekly basis. Something, I think we've actually added some items now that I'm looking at this. But you know, some purging we do, right? We clear out some logs, we clear out some technical tables, that sort of thing. The second screenshot, second and third, are actually part of our log report that comes out of Autom8. So the second screenshot is a log report on from a logic server or enterprise server. So you can see there that first message, database connection to system 920 has been lost, and it occurred 191 times over the course of the week. So that could indicate an issue. I actually worked with a customer where, as a test, we took all of their system logs, we ran it through our Autom8 system to see what the logs look like, and they had somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 database connection lost messages. I could not believe it. So they were complaining about performance. And when I ran their logs, we produced this report, we sent it off to their network team and said, hey, we told you we're having a problem. Like, we need some help, right? So after that, I didn't really hear anything back. They went off with it. They were able to resolve the issue. But just how quickly it was to quantify that issue. You know, the problem when you're dealing sometimes with other teams or other people within your team even is quantifying what you think the issue is. So that literally took minutes to prove to them that there was a network problem. Now the JAS report, It's obviously very similar to the one above, but we typically see configuration issues from the Jazz side. Nothing, it's not very often we see something critical. You know, missing version. The most common one is no F98 3051 record. So there's a missing version that someone's trying to use. I'm going to skip the monthly. It's not as exciting as this one, but the quarterly, we have different packages set up. So this is an example of a full quarterly report that includes our EnterpriseOne configuration check. So there is a bunch of things we do on a quarterly basis that ensure your configuration is consistent across all of your environments and also ensures that something hasn't changed since last time. So we look at things like OCMs, right? Are your OCMs consistent across your environments? Whatever is configured in production, you should also have configured in your non-production environments. You want to ensure that your experience across environments is consistent. This obviously is more important between, you know, production and your PY or QA environment. And we take that into account when we look at these things. Another item is around OMW development. So we look at development best practices and determine if you're following them or if you have anything that's, you know, a glaring no-no. So we look at application names, system code, reporting code. We check if you have objects checked out in production, those sorts of things. And we send you the output from all of that. We check your tools release level and how far you are from being current. Now, this indicator here, you would never get an indicator that said somewhat behind, just for the record. We would be way more specific than that. I'm gonna skip down a bit here, but we look at ESUs. Any ESUs installed to production, you wanna make sure they're installed in your other environments as well. You should never have something in production that's not in another environment, unless it's PS, which maybe on a quarterly basis, you go and update your ESUs. We look at your planner ESU. We run a table spec analysis. We make sure that your EnterpriseOne specs match what is in your database. We also take a look at your web and logic server configuration. So we look at your INIs. We make sure that they're consistent across all of your environments and servers. Obviously, there's always things that we expect to be different, right? A logic server is different from a batch server. There's different things, you know, items that would be configured slightly differently between prod and non-prod. We take all of that into consideration when we do this. We also run a job queue analysis. So we would run this job queue analysis and then work with you to help remove any bottlenecks. All right, I'm gonna go through the next few slides very quickly. I don't wanna spend a lot of time on these because I actually wanna get in and do a little bit of a demo. But we have different Autom8 packages. So we have an Autom8 package without managed services. So we can install Autom8 for you. You can manage all of the alerts, and we would come into your system once a year and we would perform any upgrades or updates. The second package is Autom8 plus Managed Services Basic. So it's a subset of our full managed services offering that doesn't include every single Autom8 check, but it includes a small subset. And then we have our Autom8 plus Managed Services Full. So everything that's on these next few slides is included with Autom8 plus Managed Services Full. So on a daily side, everything that's in the daily is included in all of our packages. We believe they are all very important and they are included across the board. On a weekly basis, most items are included in both packages. The only item that is reserved for the full package is that we review your log report every week and we make a recommendation on what you should do with the output. Is this something you need to worry about? Is it something we can ignore? Right, those types of things. On a monthly basis, same thing, we're split out into basic and full. These are more cleanup items, right? Making sure we're purging some, you know, like your OMW, we're cleaning up packages, that sort of thing. I did talk about the quarterly. The one thing to note about quarterly is the E1 configuration check and the batch queue analysis are only included in that full package. And then on the yearly basis, we also have a breakout between basic and full. The biggest item, or the biggest differentiator here, I guess, is the E1 system health check that is included with our full package. The health check is, that we take that quarterly check and we really blow it up. So we really get into your system. We go through the whole thing with a fine-tooth comb and we highlight any issues that we see. And then we also will provide you with, recommendation on, what's the risk on each of those issues? Should you be acting on them, or is it okay to just ignore them? Okay, let me get into the system here. All right, so this first screen here, this is actually our View product I mentioned earlier. We use this to actually generate our reports that are emailed to you. So this is pretty much the same thing you saw in the presentation. This is our daily report. So we would export this and we would send this off to you every morning. Now we're checking to make sure that there's no jobs waiting, UBEs, jobs, no long-running UBEs, any UBEs in error. Now we also set thresholds on these. So if you had 5 UBEs in error in the last 24 hours, we probably wouldn't create a ticket for that. But we can set the threshold for ticket creation. So after 10 jobs in error, maybe we create a ticket for someone to go look at it. And you can set those thresholds. Same with jobs waiting. We normally start with a threshold of 10 jobs waiting generates a ticket. I can think of at least one customer who doesn't want a ticket created until they hit 100. That's all configurable. We check for zombies. We check for disk space. We check your server uptime, right? We're running a UBE, same as a manual daily check would. We're checking your services, and we're checking your ports. So AIS, BSSV, JAS, OBIEE if you're running OVR. One of the things to note here is that on any of these items, we can get a full history. So for instance, this AIS check, let's go back a couple of months. I seem to remember we had an issue with AIS at one point. So you can see that every time AIS was checked, it was up, except for January 18th. Somebody was probably playing, making changes, right, bouncing the services. And so you can see exactly the time that this was checked and that it reported up or down. So full history and all of this stuff that we report on. And that holds true for weekly, monthly, quarterly. Now, one thing I'd like to note here is you'll note that the Work Center purge and the Submitted Jobs purge both say that they are not validated successfully. And what we do is, instead of just submitting the UBE and forgetting about it, once the UBE is complete, we circle back and do a check of the files. So for every file that has a purge on it, we go back and look at the file to ensure that everything that was supposed to be purged was purged. If there's any records left in that table that should not be there, we flag this item as not validated successfully. And that's so that we can go in and look at the table and see what's wrong. A lot of times we find when we first start working with a new customer, there's a lot of orphaned records out there. And those 2 tables that are highlighted are the worst offenders. So we have some cleanup to do, and then they typically run pretty clean after that. We also have processes in place to purge logs. It's very important because that's not something that comes natively out of the system. It's something you have to do manually. And then again, a sample monthly report and quarterly. So this one's a little cleaner than my screenshot. All right, let's take a look at the scheduler. So I talked about this daily check, right? One of our scheduled checks. And I'd just like to show you. So I know the screen's probably a little bit overwhelming if it's the first time you're looking at it, but on line 116, we have a daily check. Now, if I click on this little icon here, so this is called a group job. So the daily check is the parent of these group jobs, and it has a bunch of child jobs beneath it. that allows us to kick off one job that basically spawns all of these sub jobs. Now you can do this with UBEs as well. So if you have, a bunch of UBEs that need to be grouped together, some process that requires multiple UBE submissions, you can do that easily with a group job. And you can also set dependencies. So you can see here I have a bunch of dependencies. Different things are dependent on different jobs. So for this particular item, you can see it's dependent on sequence number 5. So none of these items will start until this prerequisite is complete. And we have many different dependencies here. So you can kick off, there could be one report that everything is dependent on. And once that one report is complete, or that one UBE is complete, you can spawn multiple jobs. So you don't have to put everything in the single threaded queue just because there's one job that needs to be completed before everything else. Now, one of the other cool things you can do is on this group job, I can hit the graph button and it'll actually show me a Gantt style view of this group job, my daily check. So you can see that with my complex dependencies, I don't know, it might be a little difficult to see for you guys, I apologize because it's a little bit small, but I kick off these 4 jobs all at the same time. They all start at the exact same time, 5 a.m. on the dot. But the run UBE, R0006P, doesn't run until all of those are complete, and that's a dependency we've stated. So we can do some complex items like that. You can see that in some cases it's running single threaded, and in some cases it's running multiple things at once. Now, if you have complex schedules in place, you can look at a graph, not just in the group job, but you can look at it across your entire EnterpriseOne schedule, anything that's in RevSoft, I should say. So you just saw in a second, I pulled up a Gantt style view of all of my schedules. So you can very clearly see when each of these items ran. Now, in order to have that, the jobs have to be scheduled from within RevSoft. It does not reach out to your existing jobs that are running in EnterpriseOne and spawned from EnterpriseOne. One of the other items I wanted to show you was the concept of a recurring job. And that's that 9 to 3 job that executes every 10 minutes. So this is a recurring job right here, our performance check. So our performance check job, you can see it starts at 6 a.m. and ends at 5 p.m. So if I click on the multi-run tab, I've defined this job to start at 6 a.m., end at 5 p.m., and run every 5 minutes. That's literally all you need to do for a recurring job between 2 different hours. Very, very quick. I'd like to show you our performance report as well. So if I look at our performance, this is our performance job. It's run 67 times today. And there's a few different ways you can look at this. So we can pull up that graph, right, our job duration graph. And you can very quickly get this graph view. Now you can narrow down, I'm looking over the course of a week, which gives us a pretty major scroll bar here. But you can very quickly scroll through. I'm probably moving too fast for the screen refresh, I apologize. But you can see that at one point here, we went up over 20 seconds, right, on March 3rd. So I would very easily be able to dig into that and say, what happened at that time? I'm going to be honest with you. For one spike, I wouldn't look at it. 3 spikes, you probably have an issue. But if you wanted to dig into that in more detail, you can bring up the job history. And it gives you the exact start time, end time, and how long that took to run. So 6:05, it ran for 8 seconds. All right. I have a feeling I'm forgetting something, but I'm going to move on. So let's talk a little bit about the log monitoring. This is the Observer, and we've configured Observer to monitor all of the EnterpriseOne log locations. So what it does is every time a new JD log is created, or a JAS log, it grabs that log and it tells Autom8 to start monitoring it, to start reading it. Now, every time a log is deleted, that's what the X is here, it tells Autom8 that the log is no longer there. Let's detach from it. Let's not monitor that log anymore. Now, what this allows for is if you have that INI setting in your system where a UBE, if it completes successfully, it automatically deletes the log. It still allows us to capture the entries from that log. So even if a UBE was run, it ended in done status, all good, it deletes the log file, but then you find that your PDF is actually incorrect, we may find something within Autom8 if something slipped through the filters, right? So even though that log isn't there anymore, if any of the messages in that log slip through our exclusion filters, we will have a record of it in the Autom8 system. So let's take a, oh, I was in here earlier. Let's minimize that. So this here is the interactive sample of that log report. So you can see here that we had some IPC errors, we had some security errors, failed to complete security check by password, and how many occurrences of each of those items, right? So that's this report literally comes up in seconds. So we can very quickly see where we should be focusing. And this exact screen here is what's sent to you in your log report weekly. Now, if you find you need to dig into one of these, then we can come into the console, and the console is very granular. So what you can see here is that on Saturday the 24th around 2 a.m., these logs were actually generated because the system had a hard shutdown. So it went down out of order. I think it was the database actually dropped and stuff just started to fall apart. So we have a timeline view of our logs. Note that these logs aren't necessarily in order by log name, they're in order by time. So if you have a user that has an issue, a message is logged to a Jazz log, and maybe at the same time we get a call object kernel message, we would see that in a timeline view here. So we would see the Jazz log entry, and then right above it we would see the call object kernel log entry. We could very clearly get a picture, a timeline view of exactly what happened at that point in time. Or if a user says, at 21:56, I had a problem. Well, you can come in here and see exactly what messages were produced at that time without sifting through all of your JDE logs, your enterprise logs, your Jazz logs. One of the other cool things here, actually, I really wish I had a call object kernel here to show you, but what you can do is in the detail of every one of these entries, there is a JDE details button. And if we click on that button, it gives us more information about that log entry. Now, imagine this is a call object kernel log. So if this was a call object kernel log and the message was generated by a user, you would see in this thread name field the username and the application that they were running at the time of the issue. So when Jim calls and says, I had an issue at 21:56, you can come in here, you see the errors that were produced at 21:56, and you can say, oh yeah, Jim was in P4210. Here's his log entry of what happened. I think, Sue, that's all I have if anyone has questions.
Anyone have questions? Simply enter it in the question. I don't think we have any.
Wow.
No questions?
I think that was very thorough.
All right, well, thank you for attending. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either Michelle, her email is posted on the screen right now, or you can always email at info@erp-one.com. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.